Filming.
Filming? Hello, and thanks for joining me in sunny Scotland. We're at the Loch Lomond Arms. Loch Lomond, the lake, is across over there, not far from where we're standing. And the reason I'm here is this. This is the Ineos Grenadier. Now, some of you might be familiar with what Ineos is, whereas some of you may not be. So, Ineos, I'll give you some quick background. Ineos is a giant petrochemical company, and the company founder, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, was a big aficionado of the original Land Rover Defender. And he was sitting around with a couple of mates at a pub lamenting the demise of the old Land Rover Defender, seeing as it was discontinued a few years ago. And they thought, wouldn't it be nice to build a vehicle to carry on the spirit of the Defender? And this is it. So this is the Ineos Grenadier, and the reason it's called the Grenadier is because the pub they were sitting in was called the Grenadier. And Ineos now actually owns the pub, so it's nice how the circle has turned in full. So a bit of background about this vehicle. It was designed from the ground up. It's a clean sheet design. Everything was built from scratch, and it's a true multinational effort because Ineos is a British company, and they partnered up with Magna Steyr, which has vast experience with four-wheel drive development via the G-Wagon and various Unimog vehicles. So they co-developed the vehicle originally, and then the building blocks of the vehicle were sourced from various different suppliers. So, for example, the chassis of the vehicle is built by Gestamp in Germany. The body panels, most of the body panels are pressed in Austria. So it's basically steel bodywork, but the doors, the bonnet and the tailgate are aluminium. So underneath you have a full steel ladder frame chassis. The solid beam axles come from Carraro in Italy. So you have electronic locking diff front and rear, which are available as options. And then you have a transfer case which is built by Tremec in Mexico with, again, a central locking differential. You have a choice of two BMW-sourced engines. There's a 6-cylinder petrol turbo, which puts out 285 horsepower and 450 newton meters of torque. And there's a 6-cylinder turbodiesel, which puts out 249 horsepower and 550 newton meters. Top speed is electronically limited to 160 k's. There's an 8-speed ZF transmission, exactly as you find in a BMW X5. And that is basically the key nuts and bolts of the vehicle. Now, there are some of you who might argue that it looks rather a lot like the Land Rover Defender. But to be honest, we've spent about 2 days driving the car and also following them around. And if anything, it looks more like the G-Wagon. So if you follow me around, you can get a sense of the proportions if you kind of follow me around a little bit. So you have this sort of boxy upright design, and that's basically because this is the optimum shape for a hardcore four-wheel drive. You have short front and rear overhangs. You have a boxy frame because that gives you the best sort of passenger occupant space and luggage capacity. So there are two basic spec levels. There's a base model, which in the UAE will cost 267,000 euros. And then this is the up-spec vehicle. So you have the Fieldmaster and the Trialmaster. The Fieldmaster is more luxury oriented. This is the Trialmaster, so it's more off-road oriented. So you have steel wheels, BF Goodrich all-terrain tires. As I'd mentioned, you have the Carraro solid beam axle front and rear, coil spring suspension. Ground clearance, I think, is about 265 millimeters, so it's quite generous. And we've covered all kinds of terrain over the past couple of days. It's extremely capable off-road, tremendous traction, yet still quite comfortable on the road. Ride quality is decent, it's quite supple. Wind noise also not excessive from around the A-pillars. you do need to do quite a bit of steering wheel twirling because the box and frame steering, which is sourced from Bosch, it's 17:1 ratio, so a fair bit of wheel twirling required to get it through tight turns, etc. But all good. It's still very usable and manageable, and pretty good in terms of comfort, and build quality is absolutely impeccable. You can't really fault anything in terms of build quality. I don't know if you're able to walk around. You might not be able to fit the whole vehicle in the frame. So as you can see, it's built in Hambach, which is in France, right near the German border. So the final assembly of the vehicle is done in Hambach. But as I said, the various bits and pieces, engine, transmission come from BMW and ZF, axles come from Carraro, chassis comes from Gestamp. And then it's all put together in Hambach. And now we're getting close to the delivery phase of the vehicle. Deliveries, I think, depending on which market you're in, will commence over the coming months. And so around the back, you may not have space to show this, but you have the barn door rear end, so you have a split tailgate with the barn doors. Luggage space, not huge, but decent. So it's reasonably spacious, but yeah, could be a bit better, but not too bad. So now perhaps we can jump into the vehicle, and I'll give you a quick rundown. So if you jump into the passenger side. The key's still in, so everything is it's quite cohesively engineered. I quite like it's in aircraft style. You have a lot of the controls up here, so you have the controls for the rear and front diff lock. You have an off-road mode, which sort of loosens up the electronic stability control, turns off the parking sensors, etc. The only bit that looks out of place is this BMW-sourced gear knob, which is exactly as you'd find in X5 or any other BMW. But everything else I think is very nice. It's very functional. It has a kind of very robust feel to it. And still a lot of there's a very analog feel to this car. So a lot of physical buttons and knobs, which personally I quite like. And then you have this big knob for the transfer case to go in low range and high range. Slot it to the left to activate the center diff lock. And then you have sort of various buttons for the infotainment and also for the hill descent control to control the speed there. And that's it. So, but I would say that there could be a bit more in terms of storage space. The center compartment and the little cubby holes in the doors are a bit on the small side, and so is the glove box. You've got a grab handle on the left to help you hoist yourself up into the vehicle, but there isn't one on the driver's side because they said that would impinge visibility, so they left one off there. And the same goes for the back seats, so you don't have any grab handles, so you do kind of have to clamber up a little bit, which not ideal for kids and older folks, but basically those are the only real niggles. Other than that, it's a very cohesively engineered vehicle, and I think for a first up effort from a startup car manufacturer, it's extremely impressive. And in terms of sort of the potential opposition, there's no direct competitors, but the closest things one could argue would be things like the Mercedes G-Wagon, the Toyota Land Cruiser, Nissan Patrol, Jeep Wrangler. So it's kind of in that mold, and your typical buyer might be your lifestyle, as those who like kayaking, mountain biking, etc. You might get some farmers, government organizations like the United Nations, etc. Yeah, sort of maybe people who work in the outback. That would be the target market, and then of course you get the posers as well, who just like to be in a four-wheel drive, who have no intention of going off-road. But yeah, that is basically it in a nutshell. Rear seat space is reasonably generous. I can get in the back here. I'm not hugely tall. Bit of a struggle. I'm only 1.72 meters, but as you can see, there's quite a bit of headroom and legroom to spare. So I think as long as you're under 2 meters, you should be okay. And so that is it. The Ineos Grenadier, an exciting new addition to the off-road genre. And so yeah, depending on which market you're in, over the coming months you'll start to see this in showrooms. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video.